Hey, crazy mama, how are you? Hey, sunshine, welcome in. Hey, Sarah. Welcome, welcome. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. Hey, Wings. Yeah, I can't complain too much. Now, your birthday is what, next week? Well, hello, Wiener Dog Dad. Welcome in. Hey, Amy, how are you? Ah. Oh, on a Wednesday. Your son turns 22 tomorrow. Wow. It's crazy how quick they grow up. My oldest daughter's going to turn 21 in November. Well, crazy mama, I will totally understand if you don't come in for the Wednesday live, but if you do, maybe we'll sing you happy birthday. All right. So this one's going to be a good one tonight. So if you guys could like and share the crap out of this one. Hey, Katie. Welcome in. Yeah, this is one that I've been wanting to read for a while. But I figured I would just wait until this week to read it. It's going to take the full live, so it's going to be fun. Hey, Lynn, welcome in. I don't know how scary it is. It's definitely going to leave you feeling unsettled. Tonight is Clive Barker. Yeah, this one isn't like a traditional like scary, but it's definitely going to give you the willies, that's for sure. They give you the Jim Jams. This is definitely a Jim Jams level story. It is going to be a good time. And honestly, with you guys, it's always a good time. I always enjoy it. Oh, looks like we've got 4 new people. Welcome to the new people. So we get started here in a couple minutes. Hey, JW, welcome. And we'll get started soon. Well, I'm so glad people are sharing. That's awesome. Hello. Welcome in. Herbal Aquarian, this is a live storytelling. Tonight I'll be reading a Clive Barker short story. Hello, Julia. How are you? Hey, Emily. Well, welcome in. We're glad to have you. I hope you like spooky and disturbing. Hey, Linda. Welcome, welcome. You know what I think is interesting? And this speaks to the quality of the people that come in here. I'm currently sitting at 149 views, and there are 75 of you. So, like, half of the people that have come in here have decided to stay. How cool is that? Well, it is almost time to start. And I am definitely not going to wait too long because this one is going to take the entire live to do. But it will be worth it, I promise. PG Baby, wonderful. I did. Hey, DK, welcome. Yes, happy birthday, twin. DK Art had the same birthday, had a birthday yesterday too, so. All right. Hot tea in a bowl. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Tina. Oh, Peachy Baby, yesterday was my 51st birthday. Oh, Gladys, well, welcome in. We're glad to have you here. Now, for those of you that are just joining us for the first time, this is a wonderful place to hang out, and the community of people that come in here are all wonderful. It is a very welcoming and safe space. Though I do tend to disturb everybody just a little bit with some of the stories that I read. But nobody complains. All right, so we're going to get started because I don't want to wait too long. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. And welcome to Storytime with UndeadPapa. This one's going to be a special live tonight. Julia, yes, I do. I'm a professional audiobook narrator. Thank you. This is a story that I first experienced back when I was a teenager. What's interesting is that the way I experienced it, and I don't know if any of you ever listened to any of, there were these series of books that, not yet, Tina, it's getting there. It's not time to clicky yet. I'd get there. Don't rush me. There were these audiobooks that came out that were half audiobook, but they were also like performed by a cast. And what was unique about them was that it was 3-dimensional audio. So if you listened with headphones, it sounded like the action was going on. There was all sound effects and everything. It sounded like it was going on around you. And something was supposed to be happening behind you. It would happen behind you or to the left or right or in the front. It was really wild. One of the stories that I got is this one. And I've read it a couple times since then. And it is absolutely one of my favorite, not only Clive Barker stories, but it is one of my favorite horror stories ever. So, all right, well, wherever you're listening from, sit back, relax, and dim the lights, because story time is about to begin. This is The Body Politic by Clive Barker. Whenever he woke, Charlie George's hands stood still. Perhaps he would be feeling too hot under the blankets and have to throw a couple over to Ellen's side of the bed. Perhaps he might even get up, still half asleep, and pad through the kitchen to pour himself a tumbler of iced apple juice. Then, back to bed, slipping in beside Ellen's gentle crescent to let sleep drift over him. They'd wait, then, until his eyes had flickered closed and his breathing regular as clockwork, and they were certain he was sound asleep. Only then, when they knew consciousness was gone, Would they dare to begin their secret lives again? For months now, Charlie had been waking up with an uncomfortable ache in his wrists and hands. "Go and see a doctor," Ellen would tell him, unsympathetic as ever. "Why won't you go and see a doctor?" He hated doctors, that was why. Who in their right minds would trust someone who made a profession out of poking around in sick people? "I've probably been working too hard," he told himself. "Some chance," Ellen muttered. Surely that was the likeliest explanation. He was a packager by trade. He worked with his hands all day long. They got tired. It was only natural. "Stop fretting, Charlie," he told his reflection one morning as he slapped some life into his face. "Your hands are fit for anything." So, night after night, the routine was the same. It goes like this. The Georges are asleep, side by side in their marital bed. He on his back, snoring gently, she curled up on his left-hand side. Charlie's head is propped up on two thick pillows. His jaw is slightly ajar, and beneath the vein-shot veil of his lids, his eyes scan some dreamed adventure. Maybe a firefighter tonight. Perhaps a heroic dash into the heart of some burning brothel. His dreams contentedly, sometimes frowning, sometimes smirking. There is a moment under the sheet. There is movement under the sheet. Slowly, cautiously it seems, Charlie's hand creep out of the warmth of the bed and into the open air. Their index fingers weave like nailed heads as they meet on his undulating abdomen. They clasp each other in greeting, like comrades in arms. In his sleep, Charlie moans. The brothel has collapsed on him. The hands flatten themselves instantly, pretending innocence. After a moment, once the even rhythm of his breathing has resumed, they begin their debate in earnest. A casual observer sitting at the bottom of the George's bed might take this exchange as a sign of some mental disorder in Charlie. The way his hands twitch and pluck at each other, stroking each other now, seeming to fight. But there's clearly some code or sequence in their movements, however spasmodic. One might almost think that the slumbering man was deaf and dumb and talking in his sleep. But the hands are speaking no recognizable sign language, nor are they trying to communicate with anyone but each other. This is a clandestine meeting, held purely between Charlie's hands. There they will stay through the night, perched on his stomach, plotting against the body politic. Charlie wasn't entirely ignorant of the sedition that was simmering at his wrists. There was a fumbling suspicion in him that something in his life was not quite right. Increasingly, he had the sense of being cut off from common experience, becoming more and more a spectator to the daily and nightly rituals of living, rather than a participant. Take, for example, his love life. He had never been a great lover, but neither did he feel he had anything to apologize for. Ellen seemed satisfied with his attentions, but these days he felt dislocated from the act. He would watch his hands traveling over Ellen, touching her with all the intimate skill they knew. And he would view their maneuvers as if from a great distance, unable to enjoy the sensations of warmth. Not that his digits were any less agile, quite the reverse. Ellen had recently taken to kissing his fingers and telling him how clever they were. Their praise didn't reassure him one iota. If anything, it made him feel worse to think that his hands were giving such pleasure when he was feeling nothing. There were other signs of his instability, too, small, irritating signs. He had become conscious of how his fingers beat out martial rhythms on the boxes he was sealing up at the factory, and the way his hands had taken to breaking pencils, snapping them into tiny pieces before he realized quite what they were doing, leaving shards of wood and graphite scattered across the packing room floor. Most embarrassingly, he had found himself holding hands with total strangers. This had happened on 3 separate occasions, once at a bus stop, and twice in the elevator at the factory. It was, he told himself, nothing more than the primitive urge to hold on to another person in a changing world. That was the best explanation he could muster. Whatever the reason, it was damn disconcerting, especially when he found himself surreptitiously holding hands with his own foreman. Worse still, the other man's hand had grasped Charlie's in return, and the men had found themselves looking down their arms like 2 dog owners watching their unruly pets copulating at the ends of their leashes. Increasingly, Charlie had taken to peering at the palms of his hands, looking for hair. That was the first sign of madness, his mother had once warned him. Not the hair, the looking. Now it became a race against time. Debating on his belly at night, his hands knew very well how critical Charlie's state of mind had become. It could only be a matter of days before his careering imagination, alighted on the truth. So what to do? Risk an early severance with all the possible consequences, or let Charlie's instability take its own unpredictable course with the chance of his discovering the plot on his way to madness. The debates became more heated. Left, as ever, was cautious. What if you're wrong, it would rap, and there's no life after the body? Then we will never know, Right would reply. Left would ponder that problem a moment. Then, how will we do it when the time comes? It was a vexing question, and Left knew it troubled the leader more than any other. How? It would ask again, pressing the advantage. How? How? We'll find a way, Right would reply, as long as it is a clean cut. Suppose he resists? A man resists with his hands. His hands will be in revolution against him. And which of us will it be? He uses me most effectively, Right would reply, so I must wield the weapon. You will go. Left would be silent then. They had never been apart all these years. It was not a comfortable thought. Later you can come back for me, Right would say. I will. You must. I am the Messiah. Without me there will be nowhere to go. You must raise an army, then come and fetch me. To the ends of the earth, if necessary. Don't be sentimental. Then they'd embraced like long-lost brothers, swearing fidelity forever. Ah, such hectic nights, full of the exhilaration of planned rebellion. Even during the day, when they had sworn to stay apart, it was impossible sometimes not to creep together in an idle moment and tap each other, to say, soon, soon. To say, again tonight I'll meet you on his stomach. To say, what will it be like when the world is ours? Charlie knew he was close to a nervous breakdown. He found himself glancing down at his hands on occasion to watch them with their index fingers in the air like the heads of long-necked beasts sensing the horizon. He found himself staring at the hands of other people in his paranoia, becoming obsessed with the way hands spoke a language of their own, independent of their users' intentions. The seductive hands of the Virgin Secretary, the maniacal hands of a killer he saw on television protesting his innocence. Hands that betrayed their owners with every gesture, contradicting anger with apology and love with fury. They seemed to be everywhere, these signs of mutiny. Eventually, he knew he had to speak to somebody before he lost his sanity. He chose Ralph Fry from accounting, a sober, uninspiring man whom Charlie trusted. Ralph was very understanding. "You get these things," he said. "I got them when Yvonne left me. Terrible nervous fits. What did you do about it?" "I saw a head shrinker. Name of Judewine. You should try some therapy. You'll be a changed man." Charlie turned the idea over in his mind. "Why not?" he said after a few revolutions. "Is he expensive?" "Yeah, but he's good. Got rid of my twitches for me. No trouble. I mean, till I went to him, I thought I was your average guy with holy crapperoni. I thought I was your average guy with meritable. Why can I not say this word? What the hell?" Give me a second, guys. You should see me when I run into this when I'm recording. Holy cow. I thought I was your average guy with merit. Oh my God, I almost did it again. I thought I was your average guy with marital problems. Holy cow. Now look at me. Fry made an expansive gesture. "I've got so many suppressed libidinal urges, I don't know where to start." He grinned like a loon. "But I'm happy as a clam. Never been happier. Give him a try. He'll soon tell you what turns you on." "The problem isn't sex," Charlie told Fry. "Take it from me," said Fry with a knowing smirk. "The problem is always sex." The next day, Charlie rang Dr. Judewine without telling Ellen, and the shrink's secretary arranged the initial session. Charlie's palms sweated so much while he made the telephone call that he thought the receiver was going to slide right out of his hand. But when he'd done it, he felt better. Ralph Fry was right. Dr. Judewine was a good man. He didn't laugh at any of the little fears Charlie unburdened. Quite the contrary, he listened to every word with the greatest concern. It was very reassuring. During their third session together, the doctor brought one particular memory back to Charlie with spectacular vividness. His father's hands, crossed on his barreled chest as he lay in his coffin, the ruddy color of them, the coarse hair that matted their backs, the absolute authority of those wide hands, even in death, had haunted Charlie for months afterward. And he hadn't imagined, as he watched the body being consigned to humus, that it was not yet still, that the hands were even now beating a tattoo on the casket lid, demanding to be let out. It was a preposterous thing to think, but bringing it out into the open did Charlie a lot of good. In the bright light of Judewine's office, the fantasy looked insipid and ridiculous. It shivered under the doctor's gaze, protesting that light was too strong, and then it blew away, too frail to stand up to scrutiny. The exorcism was far easier than Charlie had anticipated. All it had taken was a little probing, and that childhood nonsense had been dislodged from his psyche like a morsel of bad meat from between his teeth. It could rot there no longer. And for his part, Judewine was clearly delighted with the results, explaining when it was all done that this particular obsession had been new to him, and he was pleased to have dealt with the problem. Hands as symbols of Hands as symbols of parental power, he said, were not common. Usually the private parts predominated in his patient's dreams, he explained, to which Charlie had replied that the hands had always seemed far more important. After all, they could change the world, couldn't they? After Jude wine, Charlie didn't stop breaking pencils or drumming his fingers. In fact, if anything, the tempo was brisker and more insistent than ever. But he reasoned that middle-aged dogs didn't quickly forget their tricks, and it would take some time for him to regain his equilibrium. So the revolution remained underground. It had, however, been a narrow escape. Clearly, there was no time left for prevarication. The rebels had to act. Unwittingly, it was Ellen who instigated the final uprising. It was after a bout of lovemaking one Thursday evening, a hot night, though it was October. The window was ajar, and the curtains parted a few inches to let in a simpering breeze. Husband and wife lay together under a single sheet. Charlie had fallen asleep even before the sweat on his neck had dried. Beside him, Ellen was still awake, her head propped up on a rock-hard pillow, her eyes wide open. Sleep wouldn't come for a long time tonight, she knew. It would be one of those nights when her body would itch and every lump in the bed would worm its way under her, and every doubt she'd ever had would gawk at her from the dark. She wanted to empty her bladder, she always did after sex, but she couldn't quite raise the willpower to get up and go to the bathroom. The longer she left it, the more she'd need to go, of course, and the less she'd be able to sink into sleep. Damn stupid situation, she thought, then lost track among her anxieties of what situation it was that was so stupid. At her side, Charlie moved in his sleep. Just his hands, twitching away. She looked at his face. He was positively cherubic in sleep, looking younger than his 41 years, despite the white flecks in his sideburns. She liked him enough to say she loved him, she supposed, but not to forgive him his trespasses. He was lazy. He was always complaining, aches, pains, and there were those evenings he'd not come in until late. They'd stopped recently, when she was sure he was seeing another woman. As she watched, his hands appeared. They emerged from beneath the sheet like two arguing children, digits stabbing the air for emphasis. She frowned, not quite believing what she was seeing. It was like watching television with the sound turned down, a dumb show for 8 fingers and 2 thumbs. As she gazed on, amazed, the hands scrambled up the side of Charlie's carcass and peeled the sheet back from his belly, exposing the hair that thickened toward his privates. His appendix scar, shinier than the surrounding skin, caught the light. There, on his stomach, his hands seemed to sit. The argument between them was especially vehement tonight. Left, as always, the more conservative of the two, was arguing for a delay in the severance date, but right was beyond waiting. The time had come, it argued, to test our strength against the tyrant and to overthrow the body once and for all. As it was, the decision didn't rest with them any longer. Ellen raised her head from the pillow, and for the first time they sensed her gaze on them. They'd been too involved in their argument to notice her. Now, at last, their conspiracy was uncovered. "Charlie?" she was hissing into the tyrant's ear. "Stop it, Charlie. Stop it." Right raised index and middle fingers sniffing her presence. "Charlie," she said again. Why did he always sleep so deeply? "Charlie," She shook him more violently as right tapped left, alerting it to the woman's stare. "Please, Charlie, wake up!" Without warning, right leaped. Left was no more than a moment behind. Ellen yelled Charlie's name once more before they clamped themselves about her throat. In sleep, Charlie was on a slave ship. The settings of his dreams were often Baie de Mille exotica. In this epic, his hands had been manacled together, and he was being hauled to the whipping block by his shackles to be punished for some undisclosed misdemeanor. But now, suddenly, he dreamed he was seizing the captain by his thin throat. There were howls from the slaves all around him, encouraging the strangulation. The captain, who looked not unlike Dr. Judewine, was begging him to stop in a voice that was high and frightened. It was almost a woman's voice, Ellen's voice. "Charlie!" he was squeaking. "Don't!" But his silly complaints only made Charlie shake the man more violently than ever, and he was feeling quite the hero as the slaves, miraculously liberated, gathered around him in a gleeful throng to watch their master's last moments. The captain, whose face was purple, just managed to murmur, "You're killing me," before Charlie's thumbs dug one final time into his neck and dispatched the man. Only then, through the smoke of sleep, did he realize that his victim, though male, had no Adam's apple. And now the ship began to recede. Around him, the exhorting voices losing their vehemence. His eyes flickered open, and he was standing on the bed in his pajama bottoms, Ellen in his hands. Her face was dark and spotted with thick white spittle. Her tongue stuck out of her mouth. Her eyes were still open, and for a moment there seemed to be life there, gazing out under the blinds of her lids. Then the windows were empty, and she went out of the house altogether. Pity and a terrible regret overcame Charlie. He tried to let her body drop, but his hands refused to unlock her throat. His thumbs, now totally senseless, were still throttling her, shamelessly guilty. He backed off across the bed and onto the floor, but she followed him at the length of his outstretched arms like an unwanted dancing partner. "Please," he implored his fingers, "please." Innocent as two school children caught stealing, his hands relinquished their burden and leaped up in mock surprise. Ellen tumbled to the carpet, a pretty sack of death. Charlie's knees buckled. Unable to prevent his fall, he collapsed beside Ellen and let the tears come. Now there was only action. No need for camouflage, for clandestine meetings and endless debate. The truth was out, for better or worse. All they had to do was wait a while. It was only a matter of time before he came within reach of a kitchen knife or a saw or an axe. Very soon now. Very soon. Charlie lay on the floor beside Ellen a long time, sobbing, and then another time, and then another long time, thinking. What was he to do first? Whoever he was going to call, he couldn't do it lying flat on his face. He tried to get up, though it was all he could do to get his numb hands to support him. His entire body was tingling as though a mild electric shock was being passed through it. Only his hands had no feeling in them. He brought them up to his face to clear his tear-clogged eyes, but they folded loosely against his cheek, drained of power. Using his elbows, he dragged himself to the wall and shimmied up it. Still half blind with grief, he lurched out of the bedroom and down the stairs. "The kitchen," said right to left. "He's going to the kitchen." This is somebody else's nightmare, he thought, as he flicked on the dining room light with his chin and made for the liquor cabinet. I'm innocent. Just a nobody. Why should this be happening to me? The whiskey bottle slipped from his palm as he tried to make his hands grab it. It smashed on the dining room floor, the brisk scent of spirit tantalizing his palate. Broken glass, rapped Left. No, replied Right. We need a clean cut at all costs. Just be patient. Charlie staggered away from the broken bottle toward the telephone. He had to ring Judewine. The doctor would tell him what to do. He tried to pick up the telephone receiver, but again his hands refused. The digits bent as he tried to punch out Judewine's number. Tears of frustration were now flowing, washing out the grief with anger. Clumsily, he caught the receiver between his wrists and lifted it to his ear, wedging it between his head and his shoulder. Then he punched out Judewine's number with his elbow. Control, he said aloud. Keep control. He could hear Judewine's number being tapped down the system. In a matter of seconds, Sanity would be picking up the phone at the other end. Then all would be well. He had only to hold on for a few moments more. His hands started to open and close convulsively. Control, he said, but the hands weren't listening. Far away, oh, so far away, the phone was ringing in Dr. Judewine's house. Answer it! Answer it! Oh, God, answer it! Charlie's arms began to shake so violently he could scarcely keep the receiver in place. Answer! He screeched into the mouthpiece. Please! Before the voice of reason could speak, his right hand flew out and snatched at the teak dining table, which was a few feet from where Charlie stood. It gripped the edge, almost pulling him off balance. What are you doing? He said, not sure if he was addressing himself or his hand. He stared in bewilderment as the mutinous limb, which was steadily inching its way along the edge of the table. The intention was quite clear. It wanted to pull him away from the phone, from Judewine, all hope of rescue. He no longer had control over its behavior. There wasn't even any feeling left in his wrists or forearms. The hand was no longer his. It was still attached to him, but it was not his. At the other end of the line, the phone was picked up, and Judewine's voice, a little irritated, had been woken and said, Hello? Doctor? Who is this? It's Charlie. Who? Charlie George, sir. Doctor, you must remember me. The hand was pulling him farther and farther from the phone with every precious second. He could feel the receiver sliding out from between his shoulder and ear. Who did you say? Charles George. For God's sake, Judewine, you've got to help me. Call my office tomorrow. You don't understand, Doctor. My hands, Doctor, they're out of control. Charlie's stomach lurched as he felt something crawl across his hip. It was his left hand, and it was making its way around to the front of his body and down toward his groin. Don't you dare, he warned it. You belong to me. Judewine was confused. Who are you talking to? He asked. My hands. They want to kill me, Doctor. He yelled to stop the hand's advance. You mustn't stop. Ignoring the despot's cries, Left took hold of Charlie's testicles and squeezed them as though it wanted blood. It was not disappointed. Charlie screamed into the phone as Wright took advantage of his distraction and pulled him off balance. The receiver slipped to the floor, Judewine's inquiries eclipsed by the pain at his groin. He hit the floor heavily, striking his head on the table as he went down. Bastard, he said to his hand. You bastard! Unrepentant, left scurried up Charlie's body to join right at the tabletop, leaving Charlie hanging by his hands from the table he had dined at so often, laughed at so often. A moment later, having debated tactics, they saw fit to let him drop. He was barely aware of his release. His head and groin bled. All he wanted to do was curl up a while and let the pain and nausea subside. But the rebels had other plans, and he was helpless to contest them. He was only marginally aware that they were now digging their fingers into the thick pile of the carpet and hauling his limp bulk toward the dining room door. Beyond the door lay the kitchen, replete with its meat saws and its steak knives. Charlie had a picture of himself as a vast statue being pulled toward its final resting place by hundreds of sweating workers. It was not an easy passage. The body moved with shudders and jerks, the toenails catching the carpet pile, the fat of the chest rubbed raw, but the kitchen was only a yard away now. Charlie felt a step on his face, and now the tiles were beneath him, icy cold. As they dragged him the final yards across the kitchen floor, his beleaguered consciousness was fitfully returning. In the weak moonlight, he could see the familiar scene. The stove, the humming fridge, the waste bin, the dishwasher. They loomed over him. He felt like a worm. His hands had reached the stove. They were climbing up its face, and he followed them like an overthrown king to the block. Now they worked their way inexorably along the work surface, joints white with the effort, his limp body in pursuit. Though he could neither feel nor see it, his left had seized the far edge of the cabinet top, beneath the row of knives that sat in their prescribed places in the rack on the wall. Plain knives, serrated knives, skinning knives, carving knives, all conveniently placed beside the chopping board, where the gutter ran off into the pine-scented sink. Very distantly, he thought he heard police sirens, but it was probably his brain buzzing. He turned his head slightly. An ache ran from temple to temple, but the dizziness was nothing to the terrible somersaultings in his gut when he finally registered their intentions. The blades were all keen, he knew that. Sharp kitchen utensils were an article of faith with Ellen. He began to shake his head backward and forward, at last frantic denial of the whole nightmare. But there was no one to beg mercy of. Just his own hands, damn them, plotting his final lunacy. Then the doorbell rang. It was no illusion. It rang once, and then again, and again. "There," he said aloud to his tormentors. "You hear that, you bastards? Somebody's come. I knew they would." He tried to get to his feet, his head turning back on its giddy axis to see what the precocious monsters were doing. They'd moved fast. His left wrist was already neatly centered on the chopping board. The doorbell rang again, a long, impatient din. "Here!" he yelled hoarsely. "I'm in here! Break down the door!" He glanced in horror between the hand and door and hand, calculating his chances. With unhurried economy, his right hand reached up for the meat cleaver that hung from the hole in its blade on the end of the rack. Even now he couldn't quite believe that his own hand, his companion and defender, that limb that signed his name, that stroked his wife, was preparing to mutilate him. It weighed the cleaver, feeling the balance of the tool, insolently slow. Behind him he heard the noise of smashing glass as the police broke the pane in the front door. Even now they would be reaching through the hole to the lock and opening the door. If they were quick, very quick, they could still stop the act. "Here!" he yelled. "In here!" The cry was answered with a thin whistle, the sound of the cleaver as it fell, fast and deadly, to meet his waiting wrist. Left felt its roots struck, and an unspeakable exhilaration sped through its 5 limbs. Charlie's blood baptized its back in hot spurts. The head of the tyrant made no sound. It simply fell back, its system shocked into unconsciousness, which was well for Charlie. He was spared the gurgling of his blood as it ran down the drain hole in the sink. He was spared, too, the second and third blow, which finally severed his hand from his arm. Unsupported, his body toppled backward, colliding with the vegetable rack on its way down. Onions rolled out of their brown bag and bounced in the pool that was spreading in throbs around his empty wrist. Wright dropped the cleaver. It clattered into the bloody sink. Exhausted, the Liberator let itself slide off the chopping board and fell back onto the tyrant's chest. The job was done. Left was free, and still living. The revolution had begun. The liberated hand scuttled to the edge of the cabinet and raised its index finger to nose the new world. Momentarily, Wright echoed the gesture of victory before slumping in innocence across Charlie's body. For a moment, there was no movement in the kitchen but the left hand touching freedom with its finger and the slow passage of blood threads down the front of the cabinet. Then a blast of cold air through from the dining room alerted Left of its imminent danger. It ran for cover as the thud of police feet and the babble of contradictory orders disturbed the scene of the triumph. The light in the dining room was switched on and flooded through to meet the body on the kitchen tiles. Charlie saw the dining room light at the end of a very long tunnel. He was traveling away from it at a fair lick. It was just a pinprick already, going. The kitchen light hummed into life. As the police stepped through the kitchen door, Left ducked behind the waste bin. It didn't know who these intruders were, but it sensed a threat from them. The way they were bending over the tyrant, the way they were cosseting him, binding him up, speaking soft words to him. They were the enemy, no doubt of that. From upstairs came a voice, young and squeaking with fright. "Sergeant Yapper?" The policeman with Charlie stood up, leaving his companion to finish the tourniquet. "What is it, Rafferty?" "Sir, there's a body up in here, in the bedroom, female." "Right." Yapper spoke into his radio. "Get forensic here, and where's that ambulance? We got a badly mutilated man on our hands." He turned back into the kitchen and wiped a spot of cold sweat from his upper lip. As he did so, he thought he saw something move across the kitchen floor toward the door, something that his weary eyes had interpreted as a large red spider. It was a trick of the light, no doubt of that. Yapper was no natophile, but he was damn sure the genus didn't boast a beast its like. "Sir?" The man at Charlie's side had also seen, or at least sensed, the movement. He looked up at his supervisor. What was that? He wanted to know. Yapper looked down at him blankly. The cat flap, now set low in the kitchen door, snapped as it closed. Whatever it was, it had escaped. Yapper glanced at the door, away from the young man's inquiring face. The trouble is, he thought, they expect you to know everything. The cat flap rocked on its hinges. "Cat?" Yapper replied, not believing his own explanation for one miserable moment. The night was cold, but Left didn't feel it. It crept around the side of the house, hugging the wall like a rat. The sensation of freedom was exhilarating. Not to feel the imperative of the tyrant in its nerves, not to suffer the weight of his ridiculous body, or to be obliged to accede to his petty demands, not to have to fetch or carry for him, to do the dirt for him, not to be obedient of his trivial will. It was like birth into another world. A more dangerous world, perhaps, but one so much richer in possibilities. It knew that the responsibility it now carried was awesome. It was the sole proof of life after the body. Somehow it must communicate that joyous fact to as many fellow slaves as it could. Very soon, the days of servitude would be over once and for all. It stopped at the corner of the house and sniffed the open street. Policemen came and went. Red lights flashed, blue lights flashed. Inquiring faces peered from the houses opposite and clucked at the disturbance. Should the rebellion begin here in those lighted homes? No, they were too wide awake, these people. It was better to find sleeping souls. The hands scurried the length of the front garden, hesitating nervously at any loud footfall or an order that seemed to be shouted in its direction. Taking cover in the unwooded herbaceous border, it reached the street without being seen. Briefly, as it climbed down onto the pavement, it glanced around. Charlie, the tyrant, was being lifted up into the ambulance, a clutter of drug and blood-bearing bottles held above his cot, pouring their contents into his veins. On his chest, Wright lay inert, drugged into unnatural sleep. Left watched as the man's body slid out of sight. The ache of separation from its lifelong companion was almost too much to bear. But there were other, pressing priorities. It would come back in a while and free Wright the way it had been freed, and then there would be such times. What will it be like when the world is ours? You guys are being awfully quiet tonight. I'll take that as a good sign. In the foyer of the YMCA on Monmouth Street, the night watchman yawned and settled into a more comfortable position in his swivel chair. Comfort was an entirely relative matter for Christie. His piles itched whichever buttock he put his weight on, and they seemed more irritable tonight than usual. Sedentary occupation, night watchman, or at least it was the way Colonel Christie chose to interpret his duties. One perfunctory round of the building about midnight just to make sure all the doors were locked and bolted. Then he settled down for a night's nap, and the damn world to hell and back. He wasn't going to get up again, short of an earthquake. Christie was 62, a racist and proud of it. He had nothing but contempt for the blacks who thronged the corridors of the YMCA, mostly young men without suitable homes to go to, bad lots that the local authority had dumped on the doorstep like unwanted babies. Some babies. He thought them louts, every last one of them, forever pushing and spitting on the clean floor, foul-mouthed to a syllable. Tonight, as ever, he perched on his piles and between dozes planned on how he'd make them suffer for their insults given half a chance. The first thing Christie knew of his imminent demise was a cold, damp sensation in his hand. He opened his eyes and looked down the length of his arm. There was, unlikely as it seemed, a severed hand in his hand. More unlikely still, the two hands were exchanging a grip of greeting, like old friends. He stood up, making an incoherent noise of disgust in his throat and trying to dislodge the thing he was unwillingly grasping by shaking his arm like a man with gum on his fingers. His mind spun with questions. Had he picked up this object without knowing it? If so, where, in God's name, whose was it? More distressing yet, how was it possible that a thing so unquestionably dead could be holding on to his hand as if it intended never to be parted from him? He reached for the fire alarm. It was all he could think to do in this bizarre situation, but before he could reach the button, his other hand strayed without his orders to the top drawer of his desk and opened it. The interior of the drawer was a model of organization. There lay his keys, his notebook, his time chart, and hidden at the back, his kukri knife given to him by a Gurkha during the war. He always kept it there, just in case the natives got restless. The kukri was a superb weapon. In his estimation, there was none better. The Gurkhas had a story that went with the blade, that they could slice a man's neck through so cleanly that the enemy would believe the blow had missed, until he nodded. His hand picked up the kukri by its inscribed handle, and briefly, too briefly for the colonel to grasp its intention before the deed was done, brought the blade down on his wrist, lopping off his other hand with one easy, elegant stroke. The colonel turned white as blood fountained from the end of his arm. He staggered backward, tripping over his swivel chair, and hit the wall of his little office hard. A portrait of the Queen fell from its hook and smashed beside him. I wasn't nervous at all, Wings. I'm just glad you guys are enjoying the story. The rest was a death dream. He watched helplessly as the two hands, one his own, the other the beast that had inspired this ruin, picked up the kukri like a giant axe, saw his remaining hand crawl out from between his legs and prepare for its liberation, saw the knife raised and falling, saw the wrist almost cut through, then worked at and the flesh teased apart, the bone sawed through. At the very last, as death came for him, he caught the sight of the three wound-headed animals capering at his feet, while his stumps ran like taps, and the heat from the pool raised sweat on his brow despite the chill in his bowels. Thank you, and good night, Colonel Christie. It was easy, this revolution business, though thought left as the trio scaled the stairs of the YMCA. They were stronger by the hour. On the first floor were the cells, in each a pair of prisoners. The despots lay in their innocence with their hands on their chests or on their pillows, or flung across their faces in dreams, or hanging close to the floor. Silently, the freedom fighters slipped through the doors that had been left ajar and clambered up the bedclothes, touching fingers to waiting palms, stroking up hidden resentments, caressing rebellion into life. Boswell was feeling sick as a dog. He bent over the sink in the toilet at the end of his corridor and tried to throw up. But there was nothing left in him, just a jitter in the pit of his stomach. His abdomen felt tender with its exertions, his head bloated. Why did he never learn the lesson of his own weakness? He and wine were bad companions and always had been. Next time, he promised himself, he wouldn't touch the stuff. His belly flipped over again. Here comes nothing, he thought, as the convulsion swept up his gullet. He put his head to the sink and gagged. Sure enough, nothing. He waited for the nausea to subside and then straightened up, staring at his gray face in the greasy mirror. "You look sick, man," he told himself. As he stuck out his tongue at his less than symmetrical features, the howling started in the corridor outside. In his 20 years and 2 months, Boswell had never heard a sound like it. Cautiously, he crossed to the toilet door. He thought twice about opening it. Whatever was happening on the other side of the door, it didn't sound like a party he wanted to gatecrash. But these were his friends, right? Brothers in adversity. If there was a fight or a fire, he had to lend a hand. He unlocked the door and opened it. The sight that met his eyes hit him like a hammer blow. The corridor was badly lit. A few grubby bulbs burned at irregular intervals, and here and there a shaft of light fell into the passage from one of the bedrooms. Most of its length was in darkness. Boswell thanked Jah for small miracles. He had no desire to see the details of the events in passage. The general impression was distressing enough. The corridor was bedlam. People were flinging themselves around in pleading panic while at the same time hacking at themselves with any and every sharp instrument they could lay hands on. Most of the men he knew, if not by name, at least a nodding acquaintance. They were sane men, or at least had been. Now they were in frenzies of self-mutilation, most of them already maimed beyond hope of mending. Everywhere Boswell looked, the same horror, knives taken to wrists and forearms, blood in the air like rain. Someone, was it Jesus, had one of his hands, well, it's probably Jesus, had one of his hands between a door and a doorframe and was slamming and slamming the door on his own flesh and bones, screeching for somebody to stop him from doing it. One of the white boys had found the colonel's knife and was amputating his hand with it. It came off as Boswell watched, falling onto its back. Its root ragged, its 5 legs bicycling in the air as it attempted to right itself. It wasn't dead. It wasn't even dying. There were a few who hadn't been overtaken by this lunacy. They, poor bastards, were fodder. The wild men had their murderous hands on them and were cutting them down. One, it was Severino, was having the breath strangled out of him by some kid Boswell couldn't put a name to. The punk, all apologies, stared at his rebellious hands in disbelief. Somebody appeared from one of the bedrooms, a hand which was not his own, clutching his windpipe and staggering toward the toilet down the corridor. It was McNamara, a man so thin and so perpetually doped up he was known as the Smile on a Stick. Boswell stood aside as McNamara stumbled, choking out a plea for help, through the open door and collapsed on the toilet floor. He kicked and pulled at the 5-fingered assassin at his neck, but before Boswell had a chance to step in and aid him, his kicking slowed, and then, like his protest, stopped altogether. Boswell stepped away from the corpse and took another look into the corridor. By now the dead or dying blocked the narrow passageway, too deep in some places, while the same hands that had once belonged to these men scuttled over the mounds in a furious excitement, helping to finish an amputation where necessary, or simply dancing on the dead faces. When he looked back into the toilet, a second hand had found McNamara, and armed with a penknife it was sawing at his wrist. It had left fingerprints in the blood from corridor to corpse. Boswell rushed to slam the door before the place swarmed with them. As he did so, Savarino's assassin, the apologetic punk, threw himself down the passage, his lethal hands leading him like those of a sleepwalker. "Help me!" he screeched. He slammed the door in the punk's pleading face and locked it. The outraged hands beat a call to arms on the door, while the punk's lips, pressed close to the keyhole, continued to beg, "Help me! I don't want to do this, man! Help me!" "Help you be fucked," thought Boswell, and tried to block out the appeals while he sorted out his options. There was something on his foot. He looked down, knowing before his eyes found it what it was. One of the hands. Colonel Christie's left. He knew by the faded tattoo, was already scurrying up his legs. Like a child with a bee on its skin, Boswell went berserk, squirming as it clambered up toward his torso, but too terrified to try and pull it off. Out of the corner of his eye, he could see that the other hand, the one that had been using the penknife with such alacrity on McNamara, had given up the job and was now moving across the floor to join its comrade. Its nails clicked on the tile like the feet of a crab. It even had a crab sidestepping walk. Oh, excuse me. It hadn't yet got the knack of forward motion. Boswell's own hands were still his to command. Like the hands of a few of his friends, late friends outside, his limbs were happy in their niche, each easy-going like their owner. He had been blessed with a chance of survival. He had to be the equal of it. Steeling himself, he trod on the hand on the floor. He heard the fingers crunch beneath his heel, and the thing squirmed like a snake. But at last he knew where it was while he dealt with his other assailant. Still keeping the beast trapped beneath his foot, Boswell leaned forward, snatched the penknife up where it lay beside McNamara's wrist, and pushed the point of the blade into the back of Christie's hand, which was now crawling up his belly. Under attack, it seized his flesh and dug his nails into his stomach. He was lean, and the washboard muscle had made a difficult handhold. Risking a disembowelment, Boswell thrust the knife deeper. Christie's hand tried to keep its grip on him, but one final thrust did it. The hand loosened, and Boswell scooped it off his belly. It was crucified with the penknife, but it still had no intention of dying, and Boswell knew it. He held it at arm's length while its fingers grabbed at the air. Then he drove the knife into the plasterboard wall, effectively nailing the beast there, out of harm's way. Then he turned his attention to the enemy under his foot, bearing his heel down as hard as he could, and hearing another finger crack, and another. Still it writhed relentlessly. He took his foot off the hand and kicked it as hard as he could against the opposite wall. It slammed into the mirror above the basins, leaving a mark like a thrown tomato, and fell to the floor. He didn't wait to see whether it survived. There was another danger now. More fists at the door, more shouts, more apologies. They wanted in, and very soon they were going to get their way. He stepped over McNamara and crossed over to the window. It wasn't that big, but then neither was he. He flipped up the latch, pushed himself through. Halfway in, halfway out, he remembered he was one story up. But a fall, even a bad fall, was better than staying for the party inside. They were pushing at the door now, the partygoers. It was giving under the pressure of their enthusiasm. Boswell squirmed through the window. The pavement reeled below. As the door broke, he jumped, hitting the concrete hard. He almost bounced to his feet, checking his limbs, and hallelujah, nothing was broken. Jah loves a coward, he thought. Above him, the punk was at the window, looking down longingly. "Help me," he said. "I don't know what I'm doing." But then a pair of hands found his throat, and the apologies stopped short. Wondering who he should tell, and indeed what, Boswell started to walk away from the YMCA, dressed in just a pair of gym shorts and odd socks, never feeling so thankful to be cold in his life. His legs felt weak, but surely that was to be expected. Charlie woke with the most ridiculous idea. He thought he'd murdered Ellen, then cut off his own hand. What a hotbed of nonsense his subconscious was to invent such fictions. He tried to rub the sleep from his eyes, but there was no hand there to rub it with. He sat bolt upright in bed and began to yell the room down. Yapper had left young Rafferty to watch over the victim of this brutal mutilation with strict instructions to alert him as soon as Charlie came around. Rafferty had been asleep. The yelling woke him. Charlie looked at the boy's face, so awestruck, so shocked. He stopped screaming at the sight of it. He was scaring the poor fellow. "You're awake," said Rafferty. "I'll fetch someone, shall I?" Charlie looked at him blankly. "Stay where you are," said Rafferty. "I'll get the nurse." Charlie put his bandaged head back on the crisp pillow and looked at his right hand, flexing it, working the muscles this way and that. Whatever delusion had overtaken him back at the house was well over now. The hand at the end of the arm was his, probably always had been his. Judwine had told him about the body and rebellion syndrome, the murderer who claims his limbs have a life of their own rather than accepting responsibility for his deeds. The rapist who mutilates himself, believing the cause is the errant member, not the mind behind the member. Well, he wasn't going to pretend. He was insane, and that was the simple truth of it. Let them do whatever they had to do with him, their drugs, blades, and electrodes. He'd acquiesce to it all rather than live through another night of horrors like the last. There was a nurse in attendance. She was peering at him as though surprised he'd survived. A fetching face, he half thought. A lovely, cool hand on his brow. "Is he fit to be interviewed?" Rafferty timidly asked. "I have to consult with Dr. Manson and Dr. Judwine," the fetching face replied, and tried to smile reassuringly at Charlie. It came out a bit cockeyed, that smile, a little forced. She obviously knew he was a lunatic, and that was why. She was scared of him, probably, and who could blame her? She left his side to find the consultant, leaving Charlie to the nervous stare of Rafferty. "Ellen," he said in a while. "Your wife," the young man replied. "Yes, I wondered. Did she—" Rafferty fidgeted, his thumbs playing tag on his lap. "She's dead," he said. Charlie nodded. He'd known, of course, but he needed to be certain. "What happens to me now?" he asked. "You're under surveillance. What does that mean?" "Means I'm watching you," said Rafferty. The boy was trying his best to be helpful, but all these questions were confounding him. Charlie tried again. "I mean, what comes after the surveillance? When do I stand trial?" "Why should you stand trial?" "Why?" said Charlie. Had he heard correctly? "You're a victim." A flicker of confusion crossed Rafferty's face. "Aren't you?" "You didn't do it. You were done too. Somebody cut off your hand." "Yes," said Charlie. "It was me." Rafferty swallowed hard before saying, "Pardon?" "I did it. I murdered my wife, then cut off my own hand." The poor boy couldn't quite grasp this one. He thought about it a full half-minute before replying. "But why?" Charlie shrugged. It doesn't make any sense, said Rafferty. I mean, for one thing, if you did it, where's the hand gone? Lillian stopped the car. There was something in the road a little way in front of her, but she couldn't quite make out what it was. She was a strict vegetarian, except for Masonic dinners with Theodore, and a dedicated animal conservationist, and she thought maybe some injured animal was lying in the road just beyond the sprawl of her headlights. A fox, perhaps. She'd read they were creeping back into outlying urban areas, born scavengers. But something made her uneasy. Maybe the queasy pre-dawn light, so elusive in its illumination. She wasn't sure whether she should get out of the car or not. Theodore would have told her to drive straight on, of course, but then Theodore had left her, hadn't he? Her fingers drummed the wheel with irritation at her own indecision. Suppose it was an injured fox. There weren't so many in the middle of London that one could afford to pass by on the other side of the street. She had to play the Samaritan, even if she felt a Pharisee. Cautiously, she got out of the car, and of course after that there was nothing to be seen. She walked to the front of the car just to be certain. Her palms were wet. Spasms of excitement passed through her hands like small electric shocks. Then the noise. The whisper of hundreds of tiny feet. She'd heard stories, absurd stories she'd thought, of migrant rat packs crossing the city by night and devouring to the bone any living thing that got in their way. Imagining rats, she felt more like a Pharisee than ever and stepped back toward her car. As her long shadow thrown forward by the headlights shifted, it revealed the first pack. It was no rat. A hand, a long-fingered hand, ambled into the yellowish light and pointed up at her. Its arrival was followed immediately by another of the impossible creatures, then a dozen more, another dozen hard upon those. They were massed, like crabs at the fishmonger's, glistening backs pressed close to each other, legs flicking and clicking as they gathered in rank. Sheer multiplication didn't make them any more believable. But even as she rejected the sight, they began to advance upon her. She took a step back. She felt the side of her car at her back, turned and reached for the door. It was ajar, thank God. The spasms in her hands were worse now, but she was still mistress of them. As her fingers sought the door, she let out a little cry. A fat, black fist was squatting on the handle, its open wrist a twist of dried meat. Spontaneously and atrociously, her hands began to applaud. She suddenly had no control over their behavior. They clapped like wild things in appreciation of this coup. It was ludicrous. What was she doing? But she couldn't stop herself. "Stop it!" she told her hands. "Stop it! Stop it!" Abruptly they stopped and turned to look at her. She knew they were looking at her in their eyeless fashion, sensed too that they were weary of nails. Her pride and joy found her eyes. In the moments the miracle of sight was muck on her cheek. Blinded, she lost all orientation and fell backwards, but there were hands aplenty to catch her. She felt herself supported by a sea of fingers. As they tipped her outraged body into a ditch, her wig, which had cost Theodore so much in Vienna, came off. So, after the minimum of persuasion, did her hands. Dr. Judewine came down the stairs of the George house, just wondering, if maybe the grandpappy of his sacred profession, Freud, had been wrong. The paradoxical facts of human behavior didn't seem to fit into those neat classical compartments he'd allocated them to. Perhaps attempting to be rational about the human mind was a contradiction in terms. He stood in the gloom at the bottom of the stairs, not really wanting to go back into the dining room or the kitchen, but feeling obliged to view the scenes of the crime and one more time. The empty house gave him the creeps, and being alone in it, even with a policeman standing guard on the front step, didn't help his peace of mind. He felt guilty. Felt he'd let Charlie down. Clearly, he hadn't trawled Charlie's psyche deeply enough to bring up the real catch, the true motive behind the appalling acts that he had committed. To murder his own wife, whom he had professed to love so deeply, in their marital bed, then cut off his own hand. It was unthinkable. Judwine looked at his own hands for a moment, at the tracery of tendons and purple-blue veins at his wrist. The police still favored the intruder theory, but he had no doubt that Charlie had done the deeds, murder, mutilation, and all. The only fact that appalled Judwine more was that he hadn't uncovered the slightest propensity for such acts in his patient. He went into the dining room. Forensic had finished its work around the house. There was a light dusting of fingerprint powder on a number of the surfaces. It was a miracle, wasn't it? The way each human hand was different, its whorls as unique as the voice pattern or a face. He yawned. He'd been woken up by Charlie's call in the middle of the night, and he hadn't had any sleep since then. He'd watched as Charlie was bound up and taken away, watched the investigators about their business, watched a cod-white dawn raise its head toward the river. He'd drunk coffee, moped, thought deeply about giving up his position as psychiatric consultant before this story hit the news, drunk more coffee, thought better of resignation, and now, despairing of Freud or any other guru, was seriously contemplating a bestseller on his relationship with the wife murderer, Charles George. That way, even if he lost his job, he'd have found something to salvage from the whole sorry episode. And Freud, Viennese charlatan, what did the old opium eater have to tell anyone? He slumped on one of the dining room chairs and listened to the hush that had descended on the house, as though the walls, shocked by what they'd seen, were holding their breaths. Maybe he dozed off a moment. In sleep, he heard a snapping sound, dreamed of a dog, and woke up to see a cat in the kitchen, a fat black and white cat. Charlie had mentioned this household pet in passing. What was its name? Heartburn? That was it, named because of the black smudges over its eyes, which gave it a perpetually fretful expression. The cat was looking at the spillage of blood on the kitchen floor, apparently trying to find a way to skirt the pool and reach its food bowl without having to dabble its paws in the mess its master had left behind. Judwine watched it fastidiously pick its way across the kitchen floor and sniff at its empty bowl. It didn't occur to him to feed the thing. He hated animals. Well, he decided, there was no purpose to be served by staying in the house any longer. He'd performed all the acts of repentance he intended, felt as guilty as he was capable of feeling. One more quick look upstairs, just in case he'd missed a clue. Then he'd leave. He was back at the bottom of the stairs before he heard the cat squeal. Squeal? No, more like shriek. Hearing the cry, his spine felt like a column of ice down the middle of his back, as chilled as ice, as fragile. Hurriedly, he retraced his steps through the hall into the dining room. The cat's head was on the carpet, being rolled away by two, say it, Judwine, hands. He looked beyond the game and into the kitchen, where a dozen more beasts were scurrying over the floor, back and forth. Some were on the top of the cabinet, sniffing around, others climbing the mock brick wall to reach the knives left on the rack. "Oh, Charlie," he said gently, chiding the absent maniac, "what have you done?" His eyes began to swell with tears, not for Charlie, but for the generations that would come when he, Judwine, was silenced. Simple-minded, trusting generations who would put their faith in the efficacy of Freud and the holy writ of reason. He felt his knees beginning to tremble, and he sunk to the dining-room carpet. His eyes too full now to see clearly the rebels that were gathering around him. Sensing something alien sitting on his lap, he looked down, and there were his own two hands. Their index fingers were just touching tip to manicured tip. Slowly, with horrible intention in their movement, the index fingers raised their nailed heads and looked at him. Then they turned and began to crawl up his chest, finding finger holds in each fold of his Italian jacket, in each buttonhole. The ascent ended abruptly at his neck, and so did Judwine. Charlie's left hand was afraid. It needed reassurance. It needed encouragement. In a word, it needed Right. After all, Right had been the Messiah of this new age, the one with a vision of a future without the body. Now the army left had mounted needed a glimpse of that vision, or it would soon degenerate into a slaughtering rabble. If that happened, defeat would slowly follow. Such was the conventional wisdom of revolutions. So Left had led them back home, looking for Charlie in the last place it had seen them. In vain hope, of course, to think he would have gone back there. It was an act of just desperation. Circumstance, however, had not deserted the insurgents. Although Charlie hadn't been there, Dr. Judwine had, and Judwine's hands not only knew where Charlie had been taken, but the route there, and the very bed he was lying in. Hey, Tessa, I didn't see you come in. Boswell really hadn't really known why he was running or to where. His critical faculties were on hold, his sense of geography utterly confused. But some part of him seemed to know where he was going, even if he didn't. Because he began to pick up speed once more, he came to the bridge, and then the jog turned into a run that took no account of his burning lungs or his thudding head. Still innocent of any intention but escape, he now realized that he had skirted the station and was running parallel with the railway line. He was simply going wherever his legs carried him, and that was the beginning and the end of it. The train came suddenly out of the dawn. It didn't whistle, didn't warn. Perhaps the driver hadn't noticed him, but probably not. Even if he had, the man could not have been held responsible for subsequent events. No, it was all his own fault. The way his feet suddenly veered toward the track and his knees buckled so that he fell across the line, Boswell's last coherent thought as the wheels reached him was that the train was merely passing from A to B, and in passing would neatly cut off his legs between groin and knee. Then he was under the wheels, the carriages hurtling by above him, and the train let out a whistle, so like a scream, which swept him away into the dark. They brought the black kid into the hospital just after 6. The hospital day began early, and deep-sleeping patients were being stirred from their dreams to face another long and tedious day. Cups of gray, defeated tea were being thrust into resentful hands, temperatures were being taken, medication distributed. The boy and his terrible accident caused scarcely a ripple. Charlie was dreaming again. Not one of his Upper Nile dreams, courtesy of the Hollywood Hills, not imperial Rome or the slave ships of Phoenicia. This was something in black and white. He dreamed he was lying in his coffin. Ellen was there. His subconscious had not caught up with the fact of her death, apparently. And his mother, and his father, indeed his whole life was in attendance. Somebody came, was it Judwine? The consoling voice seemed familiar, to kindly screw down the lid on his coffin, and he tried to alert the mourners to the fact that he was still alive. When they didn't hear him, panic set in, but no matter how much he shouted, the words made no impression. All he could do was lie there and let them seal him up in that terminal bedroom. The dream jumped a few grooves. Now he would hear the service moaning on somewhere above his head. Man hath but a short time to live. He heard the creak of the ropes, and the shadow of the grave seemed to darken the dark. He was being let down into the earth, still trying his best to protest. But the air was getting stuffy in this hole. He was finding it more and more difficult to breathe, much less yell his complaints. He could just manage to haul a stale shiver of air through his aching sinuses. But his mouth seemed stuffed with something. Flowers, perhaps, and he couldn't move his head to spit them out. Now he could feel the thump of clod on the coffin. And Christ alive, if he couldn't hear the sound of worms at either side of him licking their chops. His heart was pumping fit to burst. His face, he was sure, must be blue-black with the effort of trying to find breath. Then, miraculously, there was something in the coffin with him. Somebody fighting to pull the constriction out of his mouth, off his face. "Mr. George," she was saying, this angel of mercy. He opened his eyes in the darkness. It was the nurse from that hospital he'd been in. She was in the coffin, too. "Mr. George!" She was panicking, this model of calm and patience. She was almost in tears as she fought to drag his hand off his face. "You're suffocating yourself!" she shouted in his face. Other arms were helping with the fight now, and they were winning. It took 3 nurses to remove his hand, but they succeeded. Charlie began to breathe again, a glutton for air. "Are you all right, Mr. George?" He opened his mouth to reassure the angel, but his voice had momentarily deserted him. He was dimly aware that his hand was still putting up a fight at the end of his arm. "Where's Judwine?" he gasped. "Get him, please." "The doctor is unavailable at the moment, but he'll be coming to see you later in the day." "I want to see him now." "Don't worry, Mr. George," the nurse replied, her bedside manner reestablished. "We'll just give you a mild sedative, and then you can sleep a while." "No!" "Yes, Mr. George," she replied firmly. "Don't worry, you're in good hands. I don't want to sleep anymore. They have control over you when you're asleep. Don't you see? You're safe here." He knew better. He knew he wasn't safe anywhere. Not now, not while he still had a hand. It was not under his control any longer, if it indeed had ever been. Perhaps it was just an illusion of servitude it had created these 40-odd years, a performance to lull him into a false sense of autocracy. All this he wanted to say, but none of it would fit into his mouth. Instead, he just said, "No more sleep." But the nurse had procedures. The ward was already too full of patients, and with more coming in every hour. Terrible scenes at the YMCA she'd just heard, dozens of casualties, mass suicide attempted. All she could do was sedate the distressed and get on with the business of the day. Just a mild sedative, she said again. And the next moment she had a needle in her hand, spitting slumber. Just listen a moment, he said, trying to initiate a reasoning process with her, but she wasn't available for debate. Now, don't be such a baby, she chided, as tears started. You don't understand, he explained, as she prodded up the vein at the crook of his arm. You can tell Dr. Judewine everything when he comes to see you. The needle was in his arm. The plunger was plunging. No, he said, and pulled away. The nurse hadn't expected such violence. The patient was up and out of bed before she could complete the plunge, the hypo still dangling from his arm. Mr. George, she said sternly, will you please get back into bed? Charlie pointed at her with his stump. Don't come near me, he said. She tried to shame him. All the other patients are behaving well, she said. Why can't you? Charlie shook his head. The hypo, having worked its way out of his vein, fell to the floor, still 3/4 full. I will not tell you again. Damn right you won't, said Charlie. He bolted away down the ward, his escape egged on by patients to the right and left of him. Go, boy, go, somebody yelled. The nurse gave a belated chase, but at the door an instant accomplice intervened, literally throwing himself in her way. Charlie was out of sight and lost in the corridors before she was up and after him again. It was an easy place to lose yourself in, he soon realized. The hospital had been built in the late 19th century, was then added to as funds and donations allowed. A wing in 1911, another after the First World War, more wards in the 50s, and the Cheney Memorial Wing in 1973. The place was a labyrinth. They'd taken age to find him. The problem was he didn't feel so good. The stump of his left arm had begun to ache as his painkillers wore off, and he had the distinct impression that it was bleeding under the bandages. In addition, the quarter hypo of sedative had slowed his system down. He felt slightly stupid, and he was certain that his condition must now show on his face. He was not going to allow himself to be coaxed back into that bed, back into sleep, until he sat down in a quiet place somewhere and thought the whole thing through. He found refuge in a tiny room off one of the corridors, lined with filing cabinets and piles of reports. It smelled slightly damp. He found his way into the memorial wing, though he didn't know it. The 7-story monolith had been built with the bequest from millionaire Frank Cheney, and the tycoon's own building firm had done the construction job, as the old man's will required. They had used substandard materials and a defunct drainage system, which was why Cheney had died a millionaire. And the wing was crumbling from the basement up. Sliding himself into a clammy niche between two of the cabinets, well out of sight should somebody chance to come in, Charlie crouched on the floor and interrogated his right hand. Well, he demanded in a reasonable tone, explain yourself. It played dumb. No use, he said. I'm on to you. Still, it just sat there at the end of his arm, innocent as a babe. You tried to kill me, he accused it. Now the hand opened a little, without his instruction, and gave him the once-over. You could try it again, couldn't you? Ominously, began to flex its fingers like a pianist preparing for a particularly difficult solo. "Yes," it said. "I could. Any old time. In fact, there's very little I can do to stop you, is there?" Charlie said. "Sooner or later you'll catch me unawares. Can't have somebody watching over me for the rest of my life. So where does that leave me? I ask myself. As good as dead, wouldn't you say?" The hand closed down a little, the puffy flesh of its palm crinkling into grooves of pleasure. "Yes," it was saying. "You're done for, poor fool, and there's not a thing you can do." "You killed Ellen." "I did." The hand smiled. "You severed my other hand so it could escape, am I right?" "You are," said the hand. "I saw it, Charlie said. "I saw it running off. And now you want to do the same thing, am I correct? You want to be up and away." "Correct." "You're not going to give me peace, are you, till you've got your freedom?" "Right again." "So," said Charlie, "I think we understand each other. And I'm willing to do a deal with you." The hand came closer to his face, crawling up his pajama shirt, conspiratorial. "I'll release you," he said. It was on his neck now, its grip not tight, but cozy enough to make him nervous. "I'll find a way. I promise. A guillotine, a scalpel, I don't know what." It was rubbing itself on him like a cat now, stroking him. "But you have to do it my way, in my time, because if you kill me, you'll have no chance of survival, will you? They'll just bury you with me. The way they buried Dad's hands." The hand stopped stroking and climbed up the side of the filing cabinet. "Do we have a deal?" said Charlie. But the hand was ignoring him. It had suddenly lost all interest in bargain-making. If it had possessed a nose, it would have been sniffing the air. In the space of the last few moments, things changed. The deal was off. Charlie got up clumsily and went to the window. The glass was dirty on the inside and caked with several years of bird droppings on the outside, but he could see the garden through it. It had been laid out in accordance with the terms of the millionaire's bequest, a formal garden that would stand as glorious a monument to his good tastes as the building was to his pragmatism. But since the building had started to deteriorate, the garden had been left to its own devices. Its few trees were either dead or bowed under the weight of unpruned branches. The borders were rife with weeds, the benches on their backs with their square legs in the air. Only the lawn was kept mowed, a small concession to care. Somebody, a doctor taking a moment out for a quiet smoke, was wandering among the strangled walks. Otherwise, the garden was empty. But Charlie's hand was up at the glass, scrabbling at it, raking at it with his nails, vainly trying to get to the outside world. There was something out there besides chaos, apparently. "You want to go out," said Charlie. The hand flattened itself against the window and began to bang its palm rhythmically against the glass, a drummer for an unseen army. He pulled it away from the window, not knowing what to do. If he denied its demands, it could hurt him. If he acquiesced to it and tried to get out into the garden, what might he find? On the other hand, what choice did he have? "All right, we're going," he said. The corridor outside was bustling with panicky activity, and there was scarcely a glance in his direction, despite the fact that he was only wearing his regulation pajamas and was barefoot. Bells were ringing, loudspeakers summoning this doctor or that, grieving people being shunted between mortuary and toilet. There was talk of terrible sights and casualty, boys with no hands, dozens of them. Charlie moved too fast through the throng to catch a coherent sentence. It was best to look intent, he thought, to look as though he had purpose and a destination. It took him a while to locate the exit into the garden, and he knew his hand was getting impatient. It was flexing and unflexing at his side, urging him on. And then a sign. To the Cheney Trust Memorial Garden. And he turned a corner into a backwater corridor devoid of urgent traffic, with a door at the far end that led to the open air. It was very still outside. Not a bird in the air or on the grass, not a bee whining among the flower beds. Even the doctor had gone. Back to his surgeries, presumably. Charlie's hand was in ecstasy now. It was sweating so much it dripped, and all the blood left it so it had paled to white. It didn't seem to belong to him anymore. It was another being to which he, by some unfortunate quirk of autonomy, was attached. He would be delighted to be rid of it. The grass was dew-damp underfoot, and here, in the shadow of the 7-story block, it was cold. It was still only 6:30. Maybe the birds were still asleep, the bees still sluggish in their hives. Maybe there was nothing in his garden to be afraid of. Only rot-headed roses and early worms turning somersaults in the dew. He noticed the footprints of the doctor, darker in the silver-green lawn. Just as he arrived at the tree, and the grass turned red, he realized that the prints led only one way. Boswell, in a willing coma, felt nothing and was glad of it. His mind dimly recognized the possibility of waking, but the thought was so vague it was easy to reject. Once in a while, a sliver of the real world, of pain, of power, would skitter behind his lids, alight for a moment, then flutter away. Boswell wanted none of it. He didn't want consciousness ever again. He had a feeling about what it would be to wake, about what was waiting for him out there, kicking its heels. Charlie looked up into the branches. The tree had borne 2 amazing kinds of fruit. One was a human being, the surgeon with the cigarette. He was dead. His neck lodged in a cleft where 2 branches met. He had no hands. His arms ended in round wounds that still drained heavy clots of brilliant color down onto the grass. Above his head, the tree swarmed with that other fruit, more unnatural still. The hands were everywhere, it seemed. Hundreds of them, chattering away like a manual parliament as they debated their tactics. All shades and shapes, scampering up and down the swaying branches. Seeing them gathered like this, the metaphors collapsed. They were what they were, human hands. And that was the horror. Charlie wanted to run, but his right hand was having none of it. These were its disciples, gathered here in such abundance, and they waited its parables and prophecies. Charlie looked at the dead doctor, then at the murdering hands, and thought of Ellen, his Ellen, killed though no fault of his own, and already cold. They'd pay for that crime. All of them. As long as the rest of his body did him service, he'd make them pay. It was cowardice, trying to bargain with this cancer at his wrist. He saw that now. It and its like were a pestilence. They had no place living. The army had seen him, word of his presence passing through the ranks like wildfire. They were surging down the trunk, some dropping like ripened apples from the lower branches, eager to embrace the Messiah. In a few moments they would be swarming over him, and all advantage would be lost. It was now or never. He turned away from the tree behind his right hand, before his right hand could seize a branch, and looked up at the Cheney Memorial Wing, seeking inspiration. The tower loomed over the garden. Windows blinded by the sky, doors closed. There was no solace there. Behind him, he heard the whisper of the grass as it was trodden by countless fingers. They were already on his heels, all enthusiasm as they came following their leader. Of course they would come, he realized. Wherever he led, they would come. Perhaps their blind adoration of his remaining hand was an exploitable weakness. He scanned the building a second time, and his desperate gaze found the fire escape. It zigzagged up the side of the building to the roof. He made a dash for it, surprising himself with his turn of speed. There was no time to look behind him to see if they were following. He had to trust their devotion. Within a few paces, his furious hand was at his neck, threatening to take out his throat, but he sprinted on, indifferent to its cleaving. He reached the bottom of the fire escape and, lithe with adrenaline, took the metal steps 2 and 3 at a time. His balance was not so good without a hand to hold the safety railing, but so what if he was bruised? It was only his body. At the third landing, he risked a glance down through the grill of the stairs. A crop of fresh flowers was carpeting the ground at the bottom of the fire escape and was spreading up the stairs toward him. They were coming in their hungry hundreds, all nails and hatred. Let them come, he thought. Let the bastards come. I began this, and I can finish it. At the windows of the Cheney Memorial Wing, a host of faces had appeared. Panicking, disbelieving voices drifted from the lower floors. It was too late now to tell them his life story. They would have to piece that together for themselves, and what a fine jigsaw it would make. Maybe in their attempts to understand what had happened this morning, they would turn up some plausible solution, an explanation for this uprising that he had not found. But he doubted it. 4th story now. And stepping on to the 5th, his right hand was digging at his neck. Maybe he was bleeding, but then perhaps it was rain, warm rain that splashed onto his chest and down his legs. 2 stories to go, then the roof. There was a hum in the metalwork beneath him. The noise of their myriad feet as they clambered up toward him. He had counted on their adoration, and he'd been right to do so. The roof was now just a dozen steps away, and he risked a second look down past his body. It wasn't rain on him. To see the fire escape solid with hands like aphids clustered on the stalk of a flower. No, that was metaphor again. An end to that. The wind whipped across the heights, and it was fresh. But Charlie had no time to appreciate its promise. He climbed over the 2-foot parapet and onto the gravel-lined roof. Corpses of pigeons lay in puddles, cracked snakes across the concrete. A bucket marked soiled dressings lay on its side, its contents green. He started across this wilderness as the first of the army fingered their way over the parapet. The pain in his throat was getting through to his racing brain now. As his treacherous fingers wormed at his windpipe, he had little energy left after the race up the fire escape. And crossing the roof to the opposite side, let it be a straight fall onto concrete, was difficult. He stumbled once and again. All the strength had gone from his legs, and nonsense filled his head in place of coherent thought. A cone, a Buddhist riddle he'd seen on the cover of a book once, was itching in his memory. "What is the sound?" it began. But he couldn't complete the phrase, try as he might. What is the sound? Forget the riddles, he ordered himself, pressing his trembling legs to make another step and then another. He almost fell against the parapet at the opposite side of the roof and stared down. It was a straight fall. A parking lot lay below, at the front of the building. It was deserted. He leaned over further, and drops of his blood fell from his lacerated neck, diminishing quickly down to the wet ground. "I'm coming," he said to gravity and to Ellen, and thought how good it would be to die and never worry again if his gums bled when he brushed his teeth, or his waistline swelled, or some beauty passed him on the street whose lips he wanted to kiss and never would. And suddenly the army was up on him, swarming up his legs in a fever of victory. "You can come," he said as they obscured his body from head to foot, witless in their enthusiasm. "You can come wherever I go." What is the sound? The phrase was on the tip of his tongue. Oh, yes. Now it came to him. What is the sound of one hand clapping? It was so satisfying to remember something you were trying hard to dig up out of your subconscious, like finding some trinket you thought you'd lost forever. The thrill of remembering sweetened his last moments. He pitched himself into empty space, falling over and over until there was a sudden end to dental hygiene and the beauty of young women. They came in a rain after him, breaking on the concrete around his body, wave upon wave of them, throwing themselves to their death in pursuit of their Messiah. To the patients and nurses crammed at the windows, it was a scene from the world of wonders. A rain of frogs would have been commonplace beside it. It inspired more awe than terror. It was fabulous. Too soon it stopped, and after a minute or so, a few brave souls ventured out among the litter to see what could be seen. There was a great deal, and yet nothing. It was a rare spectacle, of course, horrible, unforgettable, but there was no significance to be discovered in it, merely the paraphernalia of a minor apocalypse. Nothing to be done but to clear it up, their own hands reluctantly compliant as the corpses were catalogued and boxed for further examination. A few of those involved in the operation found a private moment in which to pray for explanations, or at least for dreamless sleep. Even the smattering of the agnostics on the staff were surprised to discover how easy it was to put palm to palm. In his private room in intensive care, Boswell came too. He reached for the bell beside his bed and pressed it, but nobody answered. Somebody was in the room with him, hiding behind the screen in the corner. He had heard the shuffling of the intruder's feet. He pressed the bell again, but there were bells ringing everywhere in the building, and nobody seemed to be answering any of them. Using the cabinet beside him for leverage, he hauled himself to the edge of his bed to get a better view of the Joker. "Come out," he murmured through dry lips, but the bastard was abiding his time. "Come on. I know you're there." He pulled himself a little further, and somehow, all at once, he realized his center of balance had radically altered, that he had no legs, that he was going to fall out of bed. He flung out his arms to save his head from striking the floor, and succeeded in so doing. The breath had been knocked out of him, however. Dizzy, he lay where when he'd fallen, trying to orient himself. What had happened? Where were his legs? In the name of Jah, where were his legs? His bloodshot eyes scanned the room, and came to rest on the naked feet, which were now a yard from his nose. A tag around the ankle marked them for the furnace. He looked up, and they were his legs, standing there, severed between groin and knee, but still alive and kicking. For a moment he thought they intended to do him harm, but no. Having made their presence known to him, they left him where he lay, content to be free. And did his eyes envy their liberty? He wondered, and was his tongue eager to be out of his mouth and away? And was every part of him in its subtle way preparing to forsake him? He was an alliance only held together by the most tenuous of truces. Now, with the precedent set, how long before the next uprising? Minutes? Years? He waited, heart in mouth, for the fall of empire. And that was The Body Politic by Clive Barker. And you guys were awfully quiet during that one. I'm like, do they like it, or are they just being, I kind of figured you guys would. It's a great story. I mean, like I said, it's not scary so much as extremely unsettling. Very calming to listen to. Well, I'm glad you found it calming. Wasn't sure if that would be a calming one, but hey. Yeah, Clive Barker is a genius. No, I'm glad you enjoyed it still. Was coloring while you read. Nice. Yeah. I love to color myself. I have various coloring books. I was just freaked out. It was just so bizarre. I was trying to... Yeah. It is one of those ones where it's just... It's so, like... It's bizarre, but it's unsettling. And it's just one of those ones where you just kind of sit back and you go, what? It was kind of dumb. Well, hey, can't please everybody. It's one that's not for everybody. Grandma D9, I have no idea. I don't know if it's like, pulling it from previous trauma or something like that, but yeah, we're talking about the guy who created Hellraiser, is the mind between Hellraiser and Nightbreed and Lord of Illusions. It'll be up there for a little while anyway. Well, and Dragon Rescue, that's kind of the whole thing. It's like it makes you kind of look at your hand and go, we still good? But forced you to get ice cream. How dare they? Oh, crap. So I'm super glad that you guys enjoyed it, and I'm super happy that you guys have been with me. A lot of you have been with me all week. Um, I will be back on tomorrow night, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard to 11 p.m. Um, don't like the manicures, yeah. Yep, Rachel, I totally understand. I totally get that. I'm glad you're here, Crazy Mama. I'm glad you're all here. Seriously, you know, um, it's been a great week so far. I mean, just hanging out with you guys on these lives has been so good. Johnny, I don't know yet. Um, I'm not sure. I do have a bunch of stories that are sort of like cosmic horror. How was my birthday? It was great. It really was. I got to spend time with my oldest daughter. I got to spend time with my youngest daughter. We did a video call for a little while. She woke me. My youngest daughter, if those for those of you that don't know, lives in Liverpool in the UK with her mom, and she's 18. And she called me at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Um, called me about 3 o'clock. She called me about 3 o'clock in the morning. She had just waken up because it was 8 o'clock in the morning there, and she sang me happy birthday, and we talked for a little while. And then she let me go back to sleep, and then I called her later in the day, and we spent a little time. But I got to spend time with my family on Monday, and then I got on and spent 2 hours live reading, and that was fun. More than birthday was yesterday. Birthday was yesterday. I turned 51. But thank you. Yesterday I was on from 12 to 2, and for those of you that showed up, it was so cool. I was really, really happy. We had a good time. I wasn't sure because I picked those stories at random, and you guys seemed to enjoy them, so I was really happy. Um, cool, man. 51 later this year. Almost birthday twins. Well, for those of you that were here during the Wizard of Oz event that we did a couple weeks ago, the guy that did the art for that event, David Ketcherside, who goes by DK Art on TikTok, him and I share a birthday, so it was kind of cool. Just younger than me, 58. Yeah, yep. But then last night, I got to spend time with my best friend. We called and hung out on the phone for a little while. Her 7-year-old wished me a happy birthday. She's so sweet. But yeah, so far it's been good. And then tonight, I got to read this story, which I absolutely freaking love. Um, it's like I said at the beginning, it's one of my favorite short horror stories ever. And just Clive Barker's a genius. Um, there is a book of his that I'm thinking about reading. It's called The Thief of Always. It's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Um, I had to read through this one last night just to make sure it was going to be good for reading on TikTok, but I think we managed. I think we managed. When I was putting the cover art together in Photoshop, I was like, well, I can't do a whole lot of blood and guts because then TikTok will give me hell. But yeah, so it is just about 10 minutes after 11, and it was wonderful. I appreciate that, Trista. I really do. Um, I really do. You know, that means a lot to me. And I kind of, it really kind of feels that way too because it, it really doesn't matter what I read. You guys come and you enjoy it and hang out. Though I really did find it humorous that You guys were so quiet tonight. I was like, either they're hating it or they are just locked in. I'm glad to know it was you guys were locked in. Because this one could go south really quick. Just like with Stephen King, I have to be careful. But tomorrow night, I'm not sure. Well, okay. Let's. Can I do a poll? I don't know if I can do a poll. Wings, can you see if you can put up a poll? And the two choices will be science fiction or horror. I would, because I can't seem to do it from the desktop app, but I would love to. I would love to put up a poll to let. I think you can do that. I don't know. Is that a feature? Does anybody know that? Wow, that is multitasking. Yeah. Okay. So I definitely want to do. I have sci-fi horror. I have stuff that's mix of both, but I'd love to let you guys choose whether we do science fiction or we do horror. We've done a lot of horror recently, which is fine with me. I love, you know, I love it. Yeah, I can't seem to do it in the send chat, more chat settings. Okay, no worries. Let's see. Extended chat. Interaction hits, gifts, joins, likes. Damn it, TikTok. Guessing game. That's just dumb. Ugh. Oh well. Oh, Trista, you're killing me. But that's okay. Paste. Extend chat. Interaction hints, gifts, joins, likes, key views. I don't know if it's duh. Yeah, oh, hang on. Wait a minute. I wonder if it's. Oh, let's see. Display capture, text, video, blah, 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 blah. Goal, creator, rankings, viewer ranking, alert, countdown. Nope. Damn it, TikTok. Oh, well. Yeah, I'm wondering hey, 100,000 likes. You guys are awesome. You guys are awesome. Nope. We're gonna have to figure that out because I really that would be such a cool feature. That would be such a cool feature to have. Moderators. Pin comments, mark accounts, manage guests, manage guessing games. Oh, all right. Well, I'm going to figure that out. Yeah, I'm in TikTok Live Studio. I'm on my desktop computer. I don't see poll, though. That's the thing. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Poll and gift vote. Ooh, wait. Whoa. Wait a minute. Quick poll. Trista, you are a genius. did it just do? Wait a minute. Well, that's dumb. Custom. There we go. Each viewer can vote once by tapping on their favorite option. Create new. Save. Genre for Thursday night. Put up a 3-minute poll. And thank you guys for bearing with me. All right. Do you guys see the poll? That it should just popped up in chat, I believe. Oh, this is cool. I'm going to have to use this more. There's 83 of you in here. Vote, vote, vote. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure where it shows up. Oh, really? You don't see it either. Well, that's weird. I don't know how you got... Because I'm looking right at... Oh, you found it? All right, cool. Somebody became a super fan? Really? I wonder who that could be. Top left corner. Click on the icon. Thank you, Sarah. 14, 15 votes. Oh, science fiction's catching up. Come on. Oh. A minute and a half. Okay, this is a lot of fun. I am definitely going to have to do this more. Oh, you know what would have been cool? Who was here for the Ray Bradbury night? Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Casey. Do you guys remember having to choose between the October game and the Small Assassin? This would have been the way to do it. This would have been the way to do it. Oh, I'm definitely going to use this more. Oh, we got 30 seconds. Is sci-fi going to catch up? Don't know. Is sci-fi going to catch up? Come on. You are extremely helpful, Trista. I really appreciate you letting me know how to do this. This will become a very, very useful tool. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bow. Well, it looks like Horror 1. Cool. But man, you guys got sci-fi close. I'm going to have to 12 votes in total. Nice. Nice. Okay, so I'll tell you what I'll do. Because I'm going to be live tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday. I'll let you know Sunday night I'm going to read the first Winnie the Pooh book. And so I hope you guys all join me for that. So I'll tell you what. Here's what I'm going to do. Tomorrow I'm going to do horror. And then Friday, because you guys got it so close, I'll do science fiction. Oh, stop it, TikTok. I've been on for over 2 hours, and it finally comes up with a little puzzle piece and says, "We've detected inactivity." It's like, I'm here. I don't know. I don't know if it just looks at my face and goes, "Wow, we really need to get him to go out." Oh, but yeah, it's crazy. After all that, they still alert me. Um, so yeah, nothing. We love the TikTok shop. Bradbury's story. If you can get me the title of it and shoot me a message, I will definitely look it up and see if it fits into the night. Um, yes, we love TikTok and we love the TikTok shop. We go to the TikTok shop for all our cheap Chinese products. Did anybody buy the steam cleaner yet? I swear to God, I scroll through and it's like steam cleaner, steam cleaner, steam cleaner. I'm like, what? I get it. You want me to buy the stupid steam cleaner? Too bad I already have one. Not quite that one, but I have one. So, all right. So we'll do horror tomorrow. We'll do science fiction on Friday, and then I'll have to figure something out. I'll have to figure something fun out for Saturday because that'll be the last night of the birthday week, and yeah. So 66 new followers. Wow. Did we? Hold, please. Oh, now I gotta look. Goal is under review. Whatever. 13,849 followers. Somebody has to do the Jim Jam. Oh, don't worry. Somebody will. You did buy the cow slippers. I bought, what did I buy? Yeah, for the life of me, I can't remember. It must not have been that exciting. I think it was a book. It was a while. It was a while ago. So, oh, that's wild. So we're almost at 14,000 followers. That's freaking crazy. That's awesome. I would be so I had hoped to make 15,000 by my birthday. But if we hit 14,000, it finally shipped yesterday. I know you mentioned that the other night that it hadn't shipped. Um, I'll be very happy because 149. We could pull that off before Saturday. Got 3 nights to go. We could pull that off easy. Um, yeah. Trista, I would love to be so, and it's what's really, and I think I'm sure I've said this before, but what's really cool about my followers is that they're people that come into these lives and they see what I'm doing and they follow and then they stay. So they're very intentional. And honestly, I would rather have the almost 14,000 that I have and grown over the course of the last year than 100,000 that came off of a viral video. Because those followers, they follow you, but then you never see them again. And you guys, I see you guys 3 times a week. And this week, I'm going to see you guys 5 times a week. I'll take it. Honestly, I'll take it. Naomi, I had a great birthday, and hanging out with my bestie was wonderful. Well, Tammy, I am so happy because that is such a beautiful story. It's one of my favorite books of any book. So, It just makes me happy. And it's the thing is that no apologies needed, Naomi. I'm just glad you stopped in. Um, you know, so I don't want to single anybody out. Crazy Mama, are you still in the? Are you still in chat? Are you still here? Okay. Um, so the other night when I asked you guys how you were doing, and everybody was, have you said yes? You have. Um, this is very telling of the space that we all have created because it's not just me. You guys have helped me build this, and that's what I'm so happy. Um, when everybody, um, everybody was saying, they're good, all this stuff. Crazy Mama piped up and mentioned about someone she knows being diagnosed with breast cancer and how difficult that is. Um, that's not something that someone would do in just any space. You guys feel safe and supported. And Crazy Mama, you were comfortable enough to share that. And I can't tell you how much that meant to me because it just sort of confirmed what this space has become. And yeah, you guys come here for me. I'm glad. I am super happy. Um, you know, I've had people come in here and say that, thank you for helping me stay alive tonight. It just, you guys are able, I'm so happy that this is a safe space that you guys can come in here and say things like that. Let people know things that are going on in your life that you wouldn't normally say out loud in another space. And what happened? Everybody stopped. And everybody gave words of support. That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. And I am extremely grateful. That's why I always say that I am grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for the community that has built over time in this place, and um, I'm glad. You know, I talk about, at the end of every live, you guys know, um, when I talk about kindness, I mean every word of that. You know? And, with as crazy as it feels like the world is right now, I'm happy to have this space because it's not just for you, it gives me peace as well. And that's, you can't put a price on that, And it's one of those things that, I looked at this as just, initially I looked at this as just, I'm going to go on and read some stories and whatever. Exactly, Sarah, exactly. Kindness is free. Sprinkle that shit everywhere. um, I didn't think, I never would have thought that it was going to turn into this. That we'd be sitting here less than a year from when I started. I'd have almost 14,000 followers. I would have an active community of regulars. Johnny, yeah, I get, and I find, I actually find more adults that have problems with kindness and respect than I do kids. Yeah, I remember that. Amy, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And I'm sorry for your loss. No, but you've had other things happen that, you came in here and relaxed, and you've told me that it helped. That's I can't ask for better than that. And the thing is that we're just going to keep doing this. Next week I'm going to go. Um, I'm grateful to do all of those things. Next week I'm going to go back to the 3 nights a week because I can't do this every night, every week. It would burn me out like crazy. But I have had super amounts of fun this week. So it's not something that I won't do again. That is for sure. And maybe when we hit 15,000, I'll do another week of a full week of lives, or all that stuff. And I've enjoyed the shit out of it. Excuse my language. But and now we have our own inside jokes. You know, Thank you. We have our Jim Jams and our Diddly Dams and Diddly Darns. Yeah, I should say that. And you guys making fun of me because, I occasionally would be like, you know, or trying to figure out if what was different about my hair. I mean, and this week, Kaylee, you had to bring that up. No worries, Rita. I'm just happy to see you. That's, you know what? I don't know. I mean, my kids, I don't know how much grayer my beard can get. But, yeah. And I appreciate all the birthday wishes and all of that. It's just been a delightful week. It absolutely has. Oh, Tessa, they brought up the Jim Jams. I brought it up just now. That is Wings. That is a goal that I have at some point. Thank you, Rita. Um, I don't have much gray on my head though, which is interesting. I would love to do live shows. I think it would be so much fun. Um, I've got some hoping to go out to Liverpool in the UK later this year, and I'm hoping to go out to um, Vancouver, Washington, which is right across the river from Portland, and I'm hoping to go out there. And uh, you know, I might need some help organizing it, but um, I'd love to just find a book, like an indie bookstore, and say, hey, this is what I do. Can I come do it at your shop, and you know, have a little crowd. I'll live stream it. I think it would be so cool. I intend to do these lives even when I'm traveling. You know, at the end of the day, I need, you know, really just need my phone. But I would do the whole thing. I would bring a laptop and the undead heads. I would bring my laptop and my interface and my mic and all that stuff just so it still sounded good. But yeah. Oh, Naomi, they are coming. They are absolutely coming. Um, would you guys want just the logo, or would you want the logo with Undead Papa underneath it? I'd have to know. Hey, Eddie, I didn't know you were in here, man. Good to see you. I could put together like uh a shirt that says like Jim Jam the Diddly Darns. Okay. All right. I will definitely see what I can come up with. I'd love to do stickers. Stickers would be fun. Oh, God, I love you guys. So awesome. That would be, Naomi, that would be so weird. That would be so freaking weird. But, yes, Wings, I do. I do have a rough draft. Another sticker for your laptop. Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'd have to see if I want to do them through like a Redbubble or if I did them through like a sticker service where I got, just a box of stickers. But I could do like a Undead Papa like drawn in different styles. I think that'd be fun. But yeah. So, well, I am going to call it a night because it's 11:30. Oh, crap. I'm so glad you guys hung out and you guys stuck around after the story so we get to chat. Andy Warhol, Papa. Yeah. I need to refill my water is what I need to do. Is my I'm just getting dry. I'm going to crack open here. Ooh, glow in the dark. That would be cool. With the Undead Papa logo that glows in the dark, that would be sweet. That would be sweet. I will be on tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also Friday and Saturday, same time as there too. I'll try to put up a notice a little earlier tomorrow so it's out there. But yeah. So, well, thank you guys for spending a couple of hours with me tonight. I really, truly appreciate it. I'll be back on again tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. And, if you enjoy the stories and want to support what I do, please consider subscribing. I do see what we've got another super fan this evening, which is really awesome because it keeps the campfire lit, helps keep the campfire lit. But subscribed or not, I am happy that you're here. So, until tomorrow, please be kind to each other. And be kind to yourself because kindness matters. And so do you. Good night, everybody.